Hi, 5th graders. Today's topics are completing addition and subtraction, properties of addition, estimating sums and differences, and word problems. We're going to get started off with completing addition and subtraction. This is just a preview into what algebra is going to be like. It's very easy because we're only dealing with subtraction and addition. We're going to start off with number 4. The basic gist of this one is that we want x to be alone, so we're going to have to get rid of the 78,902 on the left side, and we can only do that by subtracting it. So we're going to subtract 78,902 from the left side, and we're going to do the same to the right side. So we're going to get 78,902. Now, when you subtract 78,902 by itself, then we just get 0, so we can just cross it out. And on the left side, we're going to be just left with negative x. And as we see here, 5,994 is way less than 78,902, so we're going to have to, that's not possible, so we're going to have to switch the order up a bit. So it's going to be 78,000 is going to be on top, 902, right? And then we put 5,094. Now, 5,094 is a positive number, right? However, 78,902 is a negative number. And always, when it comes to negative and positive, the negative is always going to overthrow the positive. So in this case, we're not going to be adding these numbers, we're going to be subtracting them. Right? Now we just subtract like normal. So we have a 2 minus 4, and that's not possible because 4 cannot go into 2. So we're going to borrow from the number next to it, which in this case is 0. And it may seem impossible to borrow from 0, but it's actually going to turn, in this case, a 9, because we're going to borrow, because it would be a 10, but then we have to borrow for the 2, which turns into a 12, right? However, we can't just take a random number out of a 0, right? Because we only got 10 here, or 9 in this case, because we borrowed from the number next to it, which is a 9 in this case. So this 9 just turns into an 8. Now we can subtract everything. 12 minus 4 is 8, right? 9 minus 9 is 0. 8 minus 0 is 8. 8 minus 5 is 3. And 7 minus 0 is just 7. And as I said earlier, 5,094 is a positive answer. However, 78,902 is a negative answer. And in this case, and when you're dealing with, when we're trying to figure out what sign the product, the sum or the difference has, we always have to look at the number that's bigger. And in this case, 78,902 is bigger, and 78,902 is the one with the negative sign. And so in this case, since 5,094 is less than 78,902, the sum will become a negative. So we just bring this down over here, and we become negative 73,808. Now, you may think that we're done, but we still have a negative right here on the left side, and we want x completely alone, right? And the only way to get rid of the negative is by dividing it by negative 1, because technically in front of this x is a 1. And since we divided by negative 1 on the left side, we're also going to do the same on the right side. And when you divide a negative by a negative, you just get positive. So we get we get x equals, not negative x, positive x equals 73,808. And that's what our final answer is going to be. So when you're solving this worksheet, just make sure you want x completely alone. Now we're going to move on to the properties of addition. This is actually fairly easy. All you have to do is follow the rules that I have written here. So associative has a plus parentheses or quantity, b plus c quantity, and then it equals quantity a plus b quantity plus c. So the order, it's not that the order is not that important for associative. It's mainly the parentheses that is important because the parentheses is what moves around. Now we're going to move on to commutative, and in this case it's a plus b equals b plus a, and in this case it's the number that moves around, right? Because as we can see, the a and b switch places. And then identity is fairly easy. It's when 0 plus a number equals that number. So we're going to apply these rules onto this worksheet. We're going to start off with number 1. Number 1 gives us 2 plus 3 equals 3 plus 2. Now we don't see any parentheses, so we can rule out associative. And we also don't see any zeros, so we can rule out identity. And we're left with commutative. And that makes sense because as you can see, the numbers 2 would stand for A and 3 would stand for B, and as you can see, they're like switched around, right? Just like this example right here. Now we're going to move on to number 4. It gives us 1 plus quantity 3 plus 2 quantity equals 2 plus quantity 1 plus 3 quantity. And we see no zeros, so we can just automatically rule out the identity, right? However, some people can get confused, but once again, all you have to do is look at the rules that I have up here. And as we can see, commutative doesn't have any parentheses and associative does. So we're going to move on and do associative. And it makes sense because if you can see, the numbers that are inside the parentheses are different, except for maybe the 3. Like on the left side, we get 3 plus 2 in the parentheses, but on the right side, it's 1 plus 3. So the numbers inside the parentheses in associative is what switches. So this is fairly easy, just make sure to follow these rules. Now we're going to do estimating sums / differences. As we can see on the directions, it says rounding each number to the nearest thousand first, right? So it wants us to round first. However, it doesn't really matter, but for this case, we're going to do rounding first. When we're rounding, we're going to look to the right here, the rules right here. I wrote x is greater than equal to, when x is greater than or equal to 5, then you round up. But if x is less than 5, you will round down. And once you're done rounding, just make sure to put zeros behind it, unless you're rounding the ones place, which is not often. We're going to do number 5. It gives us 4,681, right? And it wants us to round to the thousands place, which in this case is 4. And in order to round the 4, we're gonna have to look at the number behind it, which is 6. And 6 is greater than 5, so we're gonna round 4 up 1, which in this case will be 5. So it'll be 5,000 right here. And as I said earlier, once you're done rounding, we're just going to make the numbers behind it all zeros, which in this case is 5,000. Now we're going to move on to the 9,828. Once again, it wants us to round to the thousands place, which in this case is the 9. I want to look back at the 8 to see if it rounds up or down. And 8 is greater than 5, so we're going to round the 9 up. And when we round 9 up by 1, we get 10. So I'm going to put 10, right? And then everything else behind it is just 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3. Now that we've rounded everything, we're going to add this 5,000 and this 10,000 together. So it's going to be 5,000 plus 10,000. Oops. And 5,000 plus 10,000 is just 15,000. And that's it. That's your final answer. So when you're doing this worksheet, just make sure to follow this rule right here. This is going to be very handy when you're rounding. Now we're going to move on to word problems. We're going to do number 3 together. It says, Yon and his family sell strawberry jelly and blueberry jelly at the farmers market every Saturday. So far this year, they have sold a total of 3,190 jars of jelly. That's the total, right? If they have sold 1,183 jars of blueberry jelly, about how many jars of strawberry jelly have they sold? Round to the nearest thousands first to estimate. Okay. So though it says to round to thousands first, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna just round at the very end. You should get the same answer. So the total was 3,190, right? So that's gonna be our total. 3,190. And then the blueberry was 1,183. And then the strawberry is what we have to find out. So I'm just gonna put an X right here. So I'm gonna need to make an equation now. So our total was 3,190, right? So that's what I'm gonna equal it to. And that's the 3,190 is the blueberry jars plus the strawberry jars. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. It gave us how many blueberry jars were sold, right? But it doesn't tell us the strawberry jars, and I just said I'm gonna put a variable for the strawberry jars. So I'm gonna add them together. The blueberry, which is 1,183, plus the strawberry, which is just X in this case, equals the total, which is 3,190. And this is the same equations that we see on the first worksheet, right? The first worksheets that we saw on this video, right? So this is exactly how we're going to solve it, just like that worksheet. So we want X alone, so we're going to subtract 1,183 to both sides. So yeah, 1,183 minus right there, and then minus 1,183 right here. On the left side, it just cancels out, and we just bring down the positive X. And then we just do 3,190 minus 1,183, right? 3 cannot go into 0, so we're going to make 0 into a 10. Oops, so blurted out the answer. However, we cannot just spring out 10 from a 0, right? We only got it because we borrowed from this 9 right here. So this 9 is going to turn into an 8. And we don't need to borrow from any one, the one next to it, because 8 minus 8 equals 0. If this number had been a 7, then we would have had to borrow, but in this case, it's not, so we do not have to. Now we just subtract. 10 minus 3 is 7. 8 minus 8 is 0. 1 minus 1 is 0. 3 minus 1 is 2. So our exact answer would be that they sold 2,007 jars of strawberry jelly. However, it wants us to round to the nearest thousands, so we're going to have to look at the 2 and the number behind it, which is 0. And we're going to look back to the rules right here. 0 is less than 5, so we're going to round down. And rounding down means we're just going to leave this 2, just 2. And then everything else behind it is going to turn into zeros. So our rounded would be about, this sign right here means about, by the way. It would just be 2. And then everything behind it is 0, so we're going to need 3 zeros. And that would be our final answer. So for number 3, it would be they sold about 2,000 jars of strawberry jelly. And for word problems, always remember, it's very important that you see if they have labels or not, because labels are extremely important, okay? And that's all I have for you guys today. I hope this video helped you guys